Welcome back, everyone. You're on the Built for the Future podcast. I'm your host, Josh Rainbow, and today's guest is Managing Director of AWS Canada, Eric Gales. Eric, thank you for joining us today.
Great to be here, Josh.
We're super excited to have you on our platform for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, you're going to be joining us at Future Summit 2025 this November 18th to the 20th in Calgary, Alberta. And you're doing a keynote on Canada's AI potential. So before that, let's go a little bit deeper about what's going on. What does AWS see in Canada's AI market that other companies are missing?
Well, I think, I've been it may not be apparent, but I've been in the industry for quite a long time. And so I've lived through a few different waves of computing. I started off at the dawn of the PC era with mid-range, and then I moved into the PC era, then, of course, the internet, and then you had cloud computing and mobile and SaaS, and now this next era of AI. And AI has really been enabled by the cloud. And so there is a tremendous opportunity here for Canadian companies and other customers in the public sector to take these tools and apply them to their businesses and their operations to transform how they interact with customers, how they manage their costs, how work is done. And at a time that I think is particularly important for Canada. And so we really believe that there is just a tremendous opportunity here to exploit these tools in meaningful ways to help our society and our businesses and our people. And that's something that I'm very passionate about. My team is very passionate about here. And so we're really focused on helping all of our customers to appreciate just what's possible here and to get moving. Because just like every other wave of technology, we're all familiar with the technology adoption curve. There's the early innovators, there's the early majority, there's the late majority, and then there's laggards. Here, I think, more than any other, there's just a tremendous opportunity for those people that embrace this technology and start to learn about where to apply it, how to apply it, and to get value out of it. And so, that's my job, and my team's job is to help our customers sort of see the potential here.
I really like that. There's a couple things I want to point out there. Like, first and foremost, you talked about the start of your journey in the tech space. You've had a very, very interesting career, having worked with companies like Compact, Microsoft, VMware Canada, and now AWS Canada. And you said you were employee number one at the start. That was 10 years ago now.
Yeah.
When we look at the evolution of technology, especially through your career, having touched so many different things, a conversation that frequently gets talked about is AI and how it actually is almost looked at as its own industry, whereas a lot of individuals look at it as like a complementary tool set to the individual verticals that exist.
Yeah.
Does AWS have that perspective that, this is its own industry sector that's pushing everything forward when you look at innovation? Or do you have a contrarian take on that?
I think I see it as a set of tools. So, in my career, the importance of IT and technology has only become more important. And, you've seen that even though you're a lot younger than me in terms of how the technology has evolved, how you use it. There was a time before people had a mobile phone that was connected to the internet. And so these are all tools, just like the ones that came before them, physical tools that can be applied to do work in new and different ways. And each era of compute that certainly I've been involved in, the profound opportunity that's been there has just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And so the opportunity to deploy and apply AI is not new. It's been around for, decades. It's just it wasn't accessible to everybody because it requires a lot of compute power. And so the opportunity now is really a function of everything that came before it. The ability to build models is sort of predicated on the massive scale you can get from cloud computing like AWS, and then the ability to deploy and use that in every kind of business or use case or social environment. And so it's true that the applicability of this capability is broader than ever before. And the rate of adoption that we've seen here, just like the waves of computing before, has continued to accelerate. And so we've seen just tremendous interest in from every customer to understand this and where should they be applying it, where does it make sense. But we anticipate that the rate of adoption here will be faster than anything that's come before it. And we're seeing that with consumer use of generative AI, and then the level of interest in every company about where and how to apply this capability. And so, to that extent, it's bigger than anything came before it because it's built on everything that came before it.
It almost seems like it's kind of the age of what Apple did to the computer, where these tools have existed, like you talked about, but it's more so from a developer format. And what Apple did to commercialize the distribution of essentially consumer technology, it seems like that age is upon us. And for everyone I talk to, from my mom, my aunt, and uncles to the business leaders who are looking to deploy it, everybody's getting so much excitement from exploring it. But I feel like there's almost this possible barrier from a lot of companies being able to move faster on it. That might be an opinion of mine, but I'm curious, having a company like AWS Canada, where you're at the forefront in terms of working with a lot of these companies that are adopting it, and also trying to be a solutions architect for those that are looking to get up to speed. Is there something that's stopping Canadian companies from moving faster on AI?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is not a new problem. It's interesting if you think about sort of the history of computing. This is in business, and so there was a period of time where if you had capital, you could build and deploy infrastructure. You could build a data center, you could fill it with machinery that ran software, and you could have people that managed it. And you had an advantage over those people that couldn't do that didn't have the capital. And then with the advent of the AWS cloud, it democratized this. You didn't need to have the capital to do something new, to exploit these new tools. You could just swipe a credit card. And you had access to a computing environment that was bigger, more scalable, more global than any large institution. And so that was sort of a transformative period. And all of a sudden, those companies that had all of that legacy infrastructure, and many do today, instead of being an advantage, it's actually a disadvantage when you compare it to customers who can just start from scratch. And we saw many business models have changed on the back of doing things in new ways. And so roll forward to this advent of AI and the applicability of AI. There are startups that can build applications or new businesses immediately, leveraging the most contemporary capabilities. But if you're a large institution, an organization that's got a lot invested in some legacy environments, which were the right things to do at the time, it's just not how you would do it now, then there is work to be done there to transform from there or make your data accessible to generative AI models. You can get the value from that. And so there's a different set of constraints if you have an existing environment versus if you're lucky enough to be a startup. But then startups, they have their own constraints in terms of be able to fund their startups and drive awareness. And so this problem of how to go about embracing this technology and applying it to your business, it's not a new problem. I think it's just, in the case of this AI technology, it has such broad applicability that there's a sort of a sense of urgency required here to do the groundwork to enable you to take advantage of it. And in all cases, we're limited by skills. Every company I talk to talks about that challenge of how do I either acquire people that have these skills, or how do I retrain my people, or how do I help them to understand the art of the possible. And so that's a challenge for all of us. It's a challenge for government, for companies like mine, as well as customers trying to look at how do they empower people with skills to use, deploy, and benefit from this technology.
Yeah, let's double click into that, because when we're talking about specialized skills, obviously you have an amazing workforce of solution architects that help clients get that off the ground. One thing I always talk about with my cohort is, we've kind of pulled a rabbit out of a hat here in terms of, mixing skill set that we've had for years with, what's topical on the ground. And so for a lot of those in my network that have expanded their skill set in this domain over the years, they become, a very hot commodity. And for those with, bigger budgets, it's a lot easier to bring in a train specialists like that, that has the subject matter expertise deep in a sector like energy or healthcare, but also that combined domain knowledge in AI. How does AWS look to help its clients and its customers? If they really are coming from a point of view of like, hey, we have a great legacy business, but we're looking to expand into this domain. I'd say that's, when we look at our audience at Future Summit, that's probably about 60 to 70% of the individuals that come. They're really looking to come to learn, and expand their mentality on the subject, get educated, and find trusted partners.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's a huge focus for us on sort of two dimensions. On the business side is to help customers and companies understand what the art of the possible is here. And so if you're a business leader who doesn't appreciate this sort of what's possible with Gen AI, then you would never consider using it. And so there's a whole educational component. And of course, we spend a lot of time on helping customers both individually or in group settings or in industries sort of appreciate what's possible here with real life examples, because I think some people think that this technology is not ready for prime time, but I can tell you there are many, many customers benefiting from this technology today, getting real value from the application. So that there is, this technology is ready for prime time in many places. And then there's the skill side of how do I get there, the implementation of this. And so we have lots of programs, many of which are freely available to customers to acquire the skills that they need to translate their existing experiences and skills into what does it take to apply generative AI technologies to it, for example. And so that is a big area of focus for us, because we know that if we can help customers appreciate both the art of the possible and the how, then the opportunity for them to apply this will be much more impactful. And I think in the Canadian context, we want to be able to punch above our weight. A lot of this technology was invented here, and so there's a legacy for us to build on. Of we deserve the opportunity to be first to really apply and punch above our weight.
That sentiment, especially the art of the possible. I was just talking with Google Canada yesterday, and they were talking about how Canada is sometimes slower to adopt new technologies from a subscription standpoint, but when it does, it really gets behind it. And I know you're really focused on unlocking Canada's AI potential. From the work that you've done and your team has done, are there any stats or data that you can share that might be surprising to individuals to learn about Canada?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we just I think we've got a report coming out sometime soon, and I've got a few of the stats in front of me here. One of the things is, I think one of the stats that might surprise me is like 650,000 businesses in Canada are already using AI in some way, shape, or form. Now, there's a huge surface area there, but it shows you that people have started to apply it, to use it in lots of different ways. Of that, 160,000 of those started this year, which is, I think it works out to one business every 3 minutes. And so that's what I mean by, it's happening. Now you've got everything from, just a simple chatbot to an agent doing work on behalf of, in conjunction with a human. So there's a broad continuum of what we mean by using AI, but it is starting to be used in many different domains and every industry and every use case. From productivity, I think that's an area where we know that we can apply these tools to improve productivity. Then there's sort of this domain of business process, augmenting humans with agents and building business process. And then there are new business model opportunities with, you can build new businesses in new ways, leveraging this technology. And we're seeing examples of all three. And so the data supports that. And those companies that are using it in meaningful ways report that they have either improved productivity, they've improved efficiency, they've improved their profitability. And so what I have found, back to your sort of opening point there, is that, yes, I think when I first came to Canada 20 years ago, and I'm a very proud Canadian, when I first came here, one of my observations and one of the things I learned was that the rate of adoption here was sometimes slower than other jurisdictions, particularly the US or the UK, where I came from. But one of the things that I found here was that in the Canadian context, people want real life examples of Canadian customers. Can you point to the Canadian customer that's using this stuff. And so when I started the business here 10 years ago, we really went out of our way to identify marquee names in every vertical we could point to and say, here is Air Canada using this technology, or here is Sun Life using this technology. We can sort of make it real for people to generate that sort of backdrop. Although Canadian customers are using this technology, and so I think that it's really important here to sort of generate this sort of wave of interest in. Can you tell me more about what they're doing, or how they're doing that, or how they budget, who do they work with? Because it's not just the people that I have on staff with, it's the many partners we have in Canada that are there just to help customers to acquire the skills or focus on where are the right priorities for them. And that's why, I think, again, one of the things I heard when I came here, and I've heard in the 20 years I've been here, is this productivity gap of Canada. Given the current geopolitical landscape, there's a lot of conversation about the need for us to continue to evolve our economy here, to evolve our sort of geopolitical partners and our trading partners, and to improve our productivity. Well, here is a capability where we're really still right at the beginning, and it's available to everybody. That's one of the features of AWS, is that it's available everywhere to different countries. But we have an opportunity to be the first mover, to use it more effectively, to use it to draft off and project out into other global jurisdictions leveraging this infrastructure. And so, I'm excited about this opportunity, but it is a call to action. We need every Canadian leader, whether you're in the public service or in commercial business, to be interested, to be curious, and to get the help needed to really understand what it can do, where to apply it, and get it to work. Because I think we really do believe it can make a big difference to help us evolve our economy and our productivity, and build trading partnerships and new capabilities.
Yeah, when we're talking about the geopolitical, I think, I try to err on the positive side of things and look at the positive outcomes that have generated from it. I think that, a lot of businesses do look at their Canadian counterparts and see how can we work better together, which is amazing. But it also has increased so much collaboration between provinces. Obviously, you're in Ontario right now, and I'm in Alberta.
Yeah.
And so you're going to be flying over, not on your plane, but on a different one, to come join us in Calgary. What about Calgary excites you? Because from being boots on the ground, for the last 10 years, we've seen a tremendous amount of growth, and it's now approached that hockey stick level, where year over year it just continues to grow and scale. So I'm curious, from a nationalist perspective, when you're looking at the whole nation, what do you see about Calgary, and is there something special that you see about our domain?
Yeah, and I think it has a lot of the ingredients. Part of my role here working for AWS has been to bring the infrastructure and the people to Canada and make it available so that people can really take advantage of this capability. We built infrastructure here with our cloud technology, and we started off in our first region is Montreal, but we're the first to put a full region in Calgary. So we have a Western region, which means that you can put ultra low latency workloads in there. It has proximity to the many industries out there. The government itself in Alberta has had a big focus on, we need to diversify our economy, which has been super positive. We've got great connections with the community and government there. We've got access to power. We've got access to land to build these capabilities. There are all the ingredients, I think. We've got this great relationship with the University of Calgary there. And so there's a real right set of ingredients, and there's many fantastic startups that started with AWS in there that we've really helped to raise awareness, in some cases to help them to go global or propagate across Canada. And so I think we're very optimistic about the opportunity to sort of help Calgary sort of fulfill its mission to diversify, and also, of course, it's a great destination for people to go and live. And so, that's also another ingredient that Calgary and Alberta has going for it. It's a great environment to live and work and then take advantage of these capabilities. And so, we're super optimistic about the potential of Alberta and Calgary, and drafting off, frankly, in Western Canada as a result of the fact we have our sort of center of gravity there.
Yeah, and to talk about a few statistics of our own, stuff that we use with our team. we have 150,000 tech talent marketplace workers in Calgary. So that's about 10% of the population, 16 to 20% of the working population. Top 5 city in the world to live in. I spent a lot of time in a couple of other cities over the past year, one of them being Vienna. And I always say the one thing we don't have here is underground transport, but that's okay. We make do with Ubers. But when we're looking at the landscape and welcoming partners like AWS that have this massive footprint into our marketplace, like we couldn't be more excited to have your team looking to explore getting more work done here. We're working with AWS startups as well. They're super entrenched in our ecosystem, so it's super exciting. But when we're looking back at the summit and your speech that you're going to be talking about unlocking Canada's AI innovation, if every CEO at the summit acted on one thing Monday morning, what do you think that should be?
Um, Let me give you a sort of a philosophical view first, and I'll answer your question. So I've been in this industry for over 30 years, involved in IT from PC to now the cloud and generative AI. And when I meet executives, no matter what business they're in, whether they're in the public sector or in commercial, my philosophy is the only sustainable competitive advantage is innovation, period. If you're not innovating, you're dying. It's just at what rate? And there's plenty of examples that people can cite, like companies at the top of their game, and then they weren't. And I sort of posit, like, if you go trace, why? It was a lack of innovation on supply chain. It was a lack of innovation on the product. It was a lack of innovation on customer service. It was a lack of innovation on costing. It was a lack of innovation on geographic expansion. Like there was some miss that you could trace to lack of innovation. And then innovation, it only happens in one of two ways in my observation. One is leadership, people not happy with the status quo, the change agent that challenges it, or pain comes. And when pain comes, pain can be the catalyst to drive change or to activate leaders.
Yes.
And so we need to be innovating, and that every now and then a set of tools come along. If I go back to the dawn of my career, we worked on mid-range computers, and that meant that you had to go to the people that ran the mid-range computers to get a report and ask for a report, and then they would work on it. You'd get the report, and then the PC came along, and the PC was put in the hands of individuals. It was a personal productivity device. And all of a sudden, you could start to do things yourselves. And it was a huge catalyst for an explosion of software that ran on these PCs. And then sometime later, and there were the people that adopted that early, and there were people that didn't adopt that early. And then there was the internet. And the internet changed how you could communicate, to socialize, how you could run businesses, how you could trade, you could start new businesses. And then the mobile phone came along. So now you could take the internet with you, and you could have conversations. And so now I can do some other things in some new ways. What I have observed, which is why that adoption cycle is so important, is that there are those companies that when some new tool comes along, they spend the time to understand, what does it mean for me? Where can I apply it? And they're the catalyst. And if I look across the many customers in Canada, have the good fortune to work with, this is one of those technologies where, just like when the PC first came, because it's in the hands of the consumer, it's activated the minds of everybody because people have played with it and are thinking about how they could apply it, including the most senior executives. But the most senior executives are the ones that need to spend some time to really appreciate what the art of the possible here is and to champion looking at things in new ways. And that requires some time to pause and get help, go and look at what others are doing, spend time to sort of appreciate, because then you can put yourself in a position to be the catalyst for change, to consider a new way. And this is one of those times, if you put this opportunity of this generative AI, this new thing, it's a level playing field right now globally. We're at the early stages, and so Canada, Canadian companies, Canadian government has an opportunity to lead the way here at a time that the geopolitical environment and the economic environment has evolved. And so this is good timing. This is a good catalyst to say, hey, how could we really apply this? And so that's an essential ingredient. Every senior leader really needs to appreciate and spend the time to understand how profound this technology could be and to work out how am I going to apply it. where am I going to start, and who's going to help me. So I think that's an it's an important opportunity for leaders across our country to appreciate how this technology can help them. And part of my job is to help them, is to activate that and then help them translate that sort of aspiration, that ambition, that insight into execution that delivers real business value to their organizations.
I couldn't agree more with that sentiment, Eric, and mostly because it's what we're predicated on at Future Summit.
Right.
It's amazing to have enterprise partners like yourself in the private industry that, shape a lot of what happens at the forefront of technology. But we can't remove the fact that you need the startup groups, you need the investors, you need the regulatory groups. They're all a part of the equation, like you've talked
Yeah.
about. And I think it's so important to get them to break bread together. Our whole platform is built on the raw and sometimes uncomfortable conversations that leaders need to have so that they can understand each other's points of view. And we love to provide a safe platform for that at our summit, because for us, we measure impact by the deals that get done, the conversations that get had, the relationships that get built. Because more often than not, people are looking to understand different perspectives on how they can push innovation forward. They have their vertical that they look at every single day. And it can be so powerful when you look at the macro economy for Canada to sometimes have a simple conversation that says, hey, Eric, what do you see?
Yeah.
What are you looking at? And on that point, in 2 years, how do you think we'll know if Canada actually unlocked its AI potential?
I think it's we talk a lot here about, like, it's not about the technology. Like the technology, it's just a set of tools, like any other tool before. I've got this stupid analogy I use with folks here of, like, if you and I, if we dug holes for a living, but we'd only ever seen a shovel.
Yeah.
And so, we can do a certain amount of work in a day, we can take on a certain job, it takes a certain amount of time. And then somebody came to us and says, hey, you know what, Josh, there's this machine. It's called a backhoe. You can dig holes with this thing. Well, how much does it cost and how you get it to locations? And then all of a sudden our world will open up in terms of the art of the possible. Like, hey, we can do swimming pools now, Josh. Like, but there's a great new opportunity here. And so, these tools that we've had in the sort of history of IT, they're just tools. And what happened with the advent of AWS Cloud is that they're available to everybody. It's not an access problem. It's, do you understand the tool? Do you understand how to apply it? Do you know how to use the tool? And then when you understand that, you can sort of think about the possibilities of that tool. And so this, we will measure this on one way is the adoption of these tools and the impact of these tools to businesses that apply, because this is all about, there's no point having the pool unless you understand the business value. So you're working backwards from what's the business value, change business model, lower cost, higher revenues, global expansion, more customers, better customer sat. This is a new set of tools that can help you to sort of pursue your business objectives, citizen service. That's the mission. And so we'll be able to measure that in a few different ways: the adoption, and then the actual impact of this technology. And we'll be able to benchmark ourselves against what happens in other jurisdictions, because this is a global opportunity, partly made available because it runs on this cloud that's available in most large jurisdictions. And so, hey, fair game. It's down to us to grab hold of this, learn it, apply it, and translate it into business value to fuel our economy and our well-being of our citizens here. And so, we'll know. And I think this is something that, it is important to the government. The government's talking a lot about this, and all the business leaders I'm talking to are talking about this. And that's, frankly, my job. Like, it's not my responsibility to worry about UK, France, Germany, US. My job is to worry about Canada. And so, hey, I want to beat them. I want to be the first to help our customers apply this incredible technology to their businesses and use cases and get value. And so, I'll be measuring it too.
That's awesome. Wrapping it up here, Eric, just a light question for you. What's harder, flying a plane or leading AWS Canada?
Let's think about that. I think they're told to, like, I love doing both. Like, I love doing both. They have some similarities. In both cases, you need a plan.
Yeah.
Whatever your plan is, expect to have some turbulence. Expect your plan to not sort of play out in exactly the way that you thought it was. It's a team sport. Even when I'm flying alone, I'm relying on air traffic or weather, or somebody else is trying to help me there. And so, of course, it's a team sport here. And then, you know, uh, post any flight, no flight goes perfectly, and so I'm trying to learn from that all the time. And then, obviously, running the business here, we're trying to learn all the time about how we can do better, what we can do better, how can be more effective. And so there are some parallels, but I generally try and keep those two things apart. Flying's the distraction I get to turn off from running the business, but there's some parallels there for sure.
No, I love that perspective. Well, Eric, it's been a pleasure to have you on our podcast today. Thank you so much for the time. We're very much looking forward to seeing you live and in person at Future Summit. So yeah, any last words you want to give to the audience?
No, I'm looking forward to joining you, Josh. I think it's a really exciting time. I can't advocate enough for the tremendous opportunity that this presents. And we AWS, our job is to help customers to take advantage of that. That's why we've built infrastructure here. That's why we're making investments here. So we have people here. It's our job to help our customers, really translate this opportunity into success for them. And so I'm looking forward to spending time with you and the other folks that attend the conference. So thanks for the invitation.
Of course. And with that, everyone, we're wrapping up our episode of Managing Director of AWS Canada. So Eric Gales, it's been a pleasure, and looking forward to seeing you again in person. Cheers.
See you there. Thanks, Josh.